I'm sure you're excited to learn about how corsets are made and what it entails. I'll be sharing what I have learned in the last 2 years because I've been making corsets for 2 years. I'm not a pro yet, trust me, but I'm going to give you a few tips and tricks. Stay tuned, let's do this! So I hope you enjoyed last week's video where I did a lot of debunking of corsets. Basically, a lot of things people say about corsets that are not true, and a lot of things that are true. It depends, I guess, on your knowledge on corsetry. And I'm sure the biggest surprise was that there was an African corset. Either way, if you have not managed to watch it, the link of that video is in the description box, so feel free to catch up with it. So today I'm going to talk about a lot of things I have learned while making corsets. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on the reason you're watching this, it's not a step-by-step tutorial. I am avoiding doing step-by-step tutorial videos because generally they take very long to film, and I want to keep this channel as an information, whether it's for your business or your work process or just information based. So I'm sorry you're not going to be seeing a tutorial. However, there is a lot of footage of me making corsets, so I am going to share a lot of that footage as I explain what I have learned during the corset making process. It's not going to be me standing here talking, it's video footage. So let's do this. Whether you choose to buy your patterns or make patterns yourself, you must test them because there's a lot of things to consider with how a corset is supposed to fit you. Whether you're making it as a support garment or you want reduction, you have to test the pattern. Testing the pattern actually means making a sample as well, because you cannot just test it on paper. You actually have to sew it so that you can see how it fits, then you can know how to adjust your pattern. And this is a process that you'll probably have to do for every single corset you make, and also for the clients you decide to make for. Unless you're just repeating a corset pattern you've made before, then you can just use the same pattern. But if you are making a new design and all that, you always have to test it with a sample. It's very hard to visualize design concepts in a corset. So during your sampling process, that is the time you can test the embellishments or whatever decoration you want to put on your corsets, and then make it. If you have to make your sample in a smaller size than you, maybe it's easier. Like for me, you can see in these images I used a mannequin. It's just easier for me to visualize it when I am seeing it more than if I'm wearing it myself. So it's a very tedious process. As you can see, I went through very many different concepts and did it again and did it again. This process took a lot of days. But in the end, at least by the time you can see I have done the final concepts, I was already settled, because even these embellishments have to be done before you put the whole corset together. You cannot put the corset together and then do the embellishments. They have to be done before. Multiple fittings are part of the corset making process. Because of the function of a corset in reduction, a corset may be too big, too small, too short, too long, not giving the right curve. So you have to fit multiple times. It's very rare that you do not have to. So you have to make multiple samples and you have to fit it. You fit the sample and you also fit the final product. And before you put the eyelets, ensure that you have fit the corset once more, so that the little adjustments you can do can be done. It is better for you to take longer in the design phase of this process because of how long it takes to make a corset. There's a tendency to change your mind a lot as well. So it's better to just take your time before really making it in the final garment. Also, just think through your design. As you can see, some of the footage I have here, I had to redo the lacing of a corset because I thought I've come up with a new concept of a design. Unfortunately, I did it at the very end of my corset making process, and I had to undo the corset and then put the eyelets because the way I thought it was going to lace did not work. So it's very important that you take your time in this process. It's a good thing I didn't have to redo the whole thing because the only part that was affected is the grommet part. But definitely take your time. Cotil is the ideal fabric to use for making corsets because it's designed specifically to make corsets. It's very tightly woven and has a herringbone weave on it. There could be some that do not have a herringbone weave, but because I have not seen cotil with my own eyes, I cannot say. I can only say what professional corsetiers make their corsets with. Any other additional fabric you put, like satin or even a print fabric or any other cotton fabric, it's usually considered a fashion layer fabric, which you put on top of the cotil and you use the cotil as your base layer. Even for mesh corsets, there are specific mesh that are made for corsets because they have to be tightly woven and strong enough to be able to resist the reduction process. If you do not have access to cotil, the alternative is a tightly woven fabric used in upholstery. You can use it as your fashion layer and then add a fabric on top. Corsets are very labor intensive, and because of that, there are specific tools that are used in the process of making corsets. Some of these tools are not used in other regular clothes that you make. So here I have featured some that I had gone into greater detail during my Vlogmas series for December 2021, where you'll be able to see a better review. But here I've just featured a few of them. I've left out the safety equipment like the goggles and the gloves and things like that I'll explain more at the end of this video. But these are some that are very corset specific, at least in my journey of making corsets, from the hand press machine for making grommets, the clips for holding the fabric, and so on and so forth. So have a look. Experiment, experiment, experiment. The main rule in making corsets is that it retains its structural integrity and does the function it was created to do. Otherwise, it's pretty much a blank canvas and you can do any design you want. I'm going to show you some designs and I'm going to start with my own creations, which are the ones you're seeing right now. And I will share a few more from designers I like. Reached the end of the video. I'm sure some of that information is overwhelming. Yes, because corsets take a long time to make. So in conclusion, I will just say some of the things I really stand by. Don't use stretch fabric to make corsets. The whole point of wearing a corset is for reduction. So if you make it out of stretch fabric, it will reduce the chances of it doing its function, which is to give you that shape. Yes, you can still get, because I do have a corset I did make. I'm actually talking from experience of making a corset with stretch fabric, and I had to find a way of making it even smaller because of the stretch nature of the fabric I used. I used denim, and I think you've seen it in the footage, and that corset really gave me a difficult time, but I had to experiment to see. So it's possible, but general rule, do not use stretch fabric in corsets. It's not something you're supposed to do. But you can try and experiment. If you figure out a way, fine. If you just want it to be more of shapewear more than a corset, then I guess you can use denim. It's really okay. I am coming up with a line of waist cinchers like this one. and I will be using some with denim, because I know there are some people who like wearing corsets for just comfort, more for shapewear than for reduction. So I will be mixing the two, because now I think I have figured out how that works. So stretch fabric in general is a no. The number one fabric to use in corsets is cotil. Cotil is not available locally, so I usually try to use fabric that will not stretch, and I usually put the print on top of that fabric. So I am not going to be the person who's going to tell you have to use this and you can't use this. Experiment. If you're making corsets, you just have to experiment and see what works for you, and you move from there. But just make sure it is tightly woven. The reason it has to be tightly woven is because there's a very high chance of the bones piercing through the fabric if it's not tightly woven. Trust me, you don't want that. Bones actually pierce through either if it's not tightly woven or not properly sealed. So those are the two things you really need to check. I would really advise, especially when making these eyelets, these ones, just get a hand pressed eyelet machine or grommet making machine. Trust me, the hand press, not the hand held. I used the hand press and it's already a workout, so I don't know how people manage with the hand press. I mean handheld, sorry. Another thing is I had to get gloves, because especially when I was using the steel bones to make my corsets, my hands really suffered and I didn't have gloves. My hands were sore and it ended up making me take longer in the cutting process. Cutting those wires took the whole day. Yeah. And another thing is I needed goggles. I didn't have that as well, because the spiral steel boning has this funny thing of jumping up and around when you're snipping it with a wire cutter. Yeah, so gloves, get a good sharp wire cutter, because it took me a while. The first time I think I used pliers, I really suffered. Get a wire cutter. And then, yeah, goggles. I got plastic safety goggles, so that worked really well for me. About bones that you use in the corset, I would advise you to do your research and figure out what it is you want to accomplish with your outfit. I really do not advise for wriggling bones. I find them too flimsy and not strong enough. Other people, that's what they like using. So just know that if you're using wriggling bones, if you're practicing to make your corsets, that's fine. But just know when you're using wriggling bones, you're not going to get much reduction. They bend and lose shape very easily because they are very flexible. Corset bones should be very sturdy, very sturdy, and you really need to understand how your client or yourself is going to clean the corset. I'm going to dwell on care and wear of a corset. That means I'm going to show you how to tie all this in another video, but you really need to understand the materials you're using, and the bones you want to put will be determined by the material you want to use. So keep that in mind, and also the person how they're going to be wearing it. So keep that in mind as you're making a corset. Corsets generally do take a long time to make. You have to make the patterns. If you don't have to make the patterns, I guess you can buy the patterns. And then you have to make a sample or a twirl, like in fashion we call them twirls or samples. So you've seen in the video I've shown you, I use more cheaper fabric, non-stretch fabric. I experiment on that. I decide the design and everything, and trust me, that process can take a long time, and you probably do it more than once, depending on how skilled you are and how long you've done it, and if this is a repeat client, or all those factors you have to play in. Sample is a must. The reason why sample is a must is because once you make a corset, you cannot adjust it. Nobody can come and tell you, oh, come and take it in here. No. The reason is it already has panels that are standard. They are put in a certain space. undoing a corset is like just making a new corset. There's no point. So the sampling process is very important. This is why corsets are very expensive to make, because actually the samples should have bones. You check the reduction before you cut the client's very expensive fabric. You might want to just continue experimenting in the cheaper fabric, see if the reduction, if they're happy with it. If they're not, then you continue to adjust until they're happy with it. It's a long process, hence it takes a long time. Hence you cannot decide to get a corset made in a week or two. Depending on the details on the corset, it could take from a month going up, and depends on the type. If it's a corset like this, a month is generally good enough. An overbust might take longer because you have to now consider the shape of the bust and everything like that. There are so many aspects you have to consider. So corsets do take a long time. So if you really want one made, even by me, you will have to order way in advance. And it also makes it very expensive because of how long it takes. So for me, I do have a payment plan for people who want corsets, but just know it takes long. The beauty of them is that they are with you for life, whether you add or lose weight. If you're the type of person that doesn't fluctuate so much, you can wear the same corset for a very long time. So also when you're ordering a corset, be very practical with how you're going to wear it. So if you're going to do a lot, if you wear a lot of plain colors, maybe you'd want to get a print one. If you do a lot of print like me, you might want to get a plain one. And if you are doing an overbust corset also, you can do a plain one and have a print dress. And maybe you can wear the plain corset with so many other clothes, or you can do a print. If you wear a lot of plain dresses, you can do a print corset that you can wear with multiple. It really just depends on the kind of person you are. Fun thing I'm going to do with my waist inches, I'm going to make them double-sided. So just watch out for that. I know I am going to put an announcement when they're out. Maybe make even an advert, and you'll be able to see them on my Instagram page. So look out for that. So that's it. Next week we're going to look at terms in corsetry. I'm sure some of the words I've used can be probably very confusing. You're like, what is she saying? So I am going to do a list of words used in corsetry, specifically for corsetry. So I won't get into too many other sewing things. And I will, of course, include description and pictures. So watch out for that next week. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. I'm really hoping we reach 100 before the end of this month, 100 subscribers. But I really appreciate every single one of you. Before recording this, we're at 91, so we have 9 to go before we reach 100. I really appreciate this and your support. Watching my videos and liking, commenting, and sharing. I appreciate it. Please continue to do that for me. Bye for now. See you next week.